a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers Talk Show will fix your despair. If you want to talk conspiracies, Night Dreamers is for you. Top secret case, alien space, it's scary with the news. Tune in on the radio, don't let Big Brother know. They're listening to everything, even Gary's late night show. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Show Dreamers Talk Show will fix your despair. Because Gary's talking to you at night. Who's friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's Talk Show Radio, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers Talk Show will fix your despair. If you want to talk conspiracies, Night Dreamers is for you. Top secret case, alien space, it's scary with the news. Tune in on the radio, don't let Big Brother know. They're listening to everything, even Gary's late night show. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Show Dreamers Talk Show will fix your despair. Because Gary's talking to you at night.
Coming to you from the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network Newsroom, I'm Guy Ticker with the Strange News. Huge ancient lost city found in the Amazon. A huge ancient city has been found in the Amazon, hidden for thousands of years by lush vegetation. The discovery changes what we know about the history of the people living in the Amazon. The houses and plazas in the Upano area of eastern Ecuador were connected by an astounding network of roads and canals. No word yet if there were tolls. I'm Guy Ticker. The Strange News is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. Do you have a strange story? Contact us at nightdreamstalkradio.com. You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, the home of Night Dreams Talk Radio, with Gary Anderson, syndicated worldwide. Paranormal Talk Radio, like you remember.
Well, everybody, I hope everybody's had a great week. We're thawing out down at the compound, I can tell you that. Boy, the snow is gone. It's not freezing anymore, and it feels like I'm in a desert. It's got 35 degrees today. I tell you, that is totally crazy. You know, tonight we're going to be talking about time travel. Would you time travel if you could? Would you go back in time to 100 years, 200 years, biblical times or before? And if we did go back in time, just think about this. Your family tree, would it still exist? Would you even exist if we went back in time? And would you go back in time if you didn't know or not if you, well, could come back? That is all the questions I wonder. And how about time slips? Have any of you guys ever encountered a time slip? Well, going to get a gas where all of a sudden it's 19 cents a gallon and you're figuring out what in the blank is going on? Only 19 cents a gallon. And then you drive off the gas station and you're saying to yourself, boy, those pumps look really crazy. And JC, you know, the attendants washing your windows. When's the last time you had a window washed at a gas station?
About 1985.
Yeah, that's, you know, think about that. But if you went back in time, you could erase your whole family tree, which means then, well, maybe you wouldn't exist.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a paradox where actually it was part, like if you go back, it was meant to be. You're part of it. You're part of the whole circle, so to speak.
Yeah, but again, if you go back, okay, and your family tree is gone, that's all your relatives are not existent anymore, then you wouldn't exist. So if you're going back to what? Nothing. Nothingness.
You're trying to give me a headache today, aren't you?
I am, too. It's the same way when you die. Are you time traveling when you die? Are you going back to a new future or a past future? Or like a hard drive in your computer, when it goes, it's over with, it's gone, it's in landfill.
And how does time travel and time slips fit in with what they call the matrix that we're living in with that whole theory, I wonder?
Well, think about that. Are we a program running? Could we be a program running by, remember the Twilight Zone where this whole town, you couldn't leave the town, no matter how you try to drive out of it, you couldn't get out of it?
Yeah, you would leave, but you'd end up coming on the other end.
Yeah, and then it turned out to be at the end of the show, it was some little girl. Instead of having a playhouse, she had a little town, and she had a couple people that she was playing with. And her mother said, hey, take care of your pets. Don't abuse them.
Yeah, or we're going to throw them out in the garbage.
Or something. Well, when we come back, we got Andrew on, and we're going to talk about time slips, time travel, and all that right here on Night Dreamers Radio. Yes, we changed the name. That's because we have expanded the show, as a lot of you might know. On Fridays, we're now 3 hours long. We bring on, well, stars, movie stars, singers, and we're going to start even asking them, JC, if they've had any paranormal experiences. They're going to be set up for that. We'll be right back right after this ad.
Now, for all of you out there who need to know a little bit more about a little bit less, here he is.
Allow me to introduce myself. I am not Boris Badenov, celebrity spokesperson for We Fleece You Health Food Stores. Choice of fearless leader. No. He loves it. Anyway, to bring you a younger feel to your life, we have great health foods made with many chemicals we can't pronounce, only banned in California.
Oh, just like you, darling. Always trying to help others get a little more pain.
What can I say? I'm a nice guy. Anyway, this week at We Fleece You Health Food Stores, we have a snack to give you the energy you need.
Boris, you have great idea.
Our deal of the week, Sasquatch foreskins, prepared by regal rabbis. Who knew Bigfoot was Jewish?
Wel, mijn real name is Sasquatch Bigfootstein.
Low in calories, low in carbs. This is one low-hanging fruit snack. Limited to one bag because how many you think we got? Get that special feeling with Sasquatch foreskins. Oh, very good, you love it. Available now at We Fleece You Health Food Stores.
And check out your local We Fleece You Health Food Stores. They got a lot of weird stuff. Well, who's our guest here tonight?
Well, our guest tonight is Andrew Ba-shogo. Now, he is a public speaker, media personality and former presidential candidate, best known for serving as a US Crononaut and Project Pegasus during the advent of time travel, and in Project Mars during the advent of interdimensional travel.
Well, welcome to the show again. You know what? You're almost a regular on the show. You want to take over my job? Andrew, are you there? I don't know. Andrew, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, how are you doing besides not feeling good?
Good. I've been sick through most of January here.
Yeah, you know, COVID is going around again, too, and it's a new strain, which actually, when you go out to the drugstore and you buy that COVID test, it doesn't even tell you got the new COVID.
Well, if you have a virus from a cold, I don't think it's even possible to tell which it is.
I know.
But I've lost my sense of taste, so maybe it was Omicron or one of the other variants.
Yeah. Well, time travel. You know, as you being a time traveler, how about time slips? Have you ever encountered a time slip like I did?
Well, I have. It goes something like this. I interviewed Buckminster Fuller in October of 1981. And a year later, I published the interview in the men's magazine, We. And I was contacted by the Boston area conspiracy theorist. You may have encountered him. His name was Lud Ahrens.
It sounds familiar.
Ludwig Sherman Ahrens. He was really pretty much ahead of everybody on most of the themes of conspiracy theory that populated the internet when it emerged 15 years later or so. And we were talking about the politics of assassination. And I confirmed that somebody at CIA had told me that Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and Jim Morrison, as well as JFK, RFK, and MLK, had been killed by the CIA. And Lud suggested that maybe it was as many as 10,000 assassination targets since the end of World War II. And I said, just right off the cuff, I said, well, what about Arthur Kessler and his wife? And he said, what about them? And I said, well, dying in a murder-suicide like that is most unusual. And maybe that was an assassination because of Kessler's anti-communism, his books like Darkness at Noon. And Lud said to his wife, Sally, who we had just been talking to, he said, Sally, come in here. And when she did, we were down at a rental condo they were renting down in Marina del Rey, California, when I was living on the UCLA campus as an undergrad at UCLA. And he said, Andy, tell Sally what you told me. And I repeated the story that we were talking about the politics of assassination. And I discussed the mysterious death of the Kesslers. The problem is, I know that meeting with the Lud and Sally Ahrens was on Halloween of 1982. But the Kesslers would not die for several months. Now, when I thought about why I knew that, I remembered going onto the UCLA campus and going up to the undergraduate research library to kill time before class. And I pulled one of the popular news magazines off the rack. It was undoubtedly Time, Newsweek, or U.S. News and World Report. And it reported the milestone of the death of the Kesslers. So that could not have been the same time that we were in, because in our time, the Kesslers wouldn't die until like March 1st. Now that's documented. I had 2 witnesses. I was not a particular fan of Arthur Kessler. I'd read several of his books, but I believe that was a time slip, because when I went to the undergraduate research library at UCLA, time slipped and I experienced the future. There's really no other way of interpreting what happened, with 2 very diligent witnesses. because they were astonished because he knew that Kessler and his wife were not dead, but they would be. And I was talking about it as if it was a fait accompli. So yes, I have had a time slip. Now, William Whitecrow, one of my fellow Mars astronauts, said that all of us in Project Mars were going back and forth between two adjacent timelines. So I have to add the caveat of that and the fact that I was taking the jump room to Mars from that aeronautical repositioning chamber at 999 North Sepulveda in El Segundo, California, down the San Diego Freeway from UCLA. But that's a pretty much a proved out time slip, I believe, that happened as a result. I wasn't mistaken. I remembered reading about the Kessler's death. I mean, I have a good memory. I've always been interested in, literature and other writers, and I made note of the fact that the author of Darkness at Noon and his wife had died in a murder-suicide. And I discussed it, but the problem is I discussed it essentially 3 months before it happened.
That is interesting. Like I was telling you about my time slip, down by a little town as you go to Mount Rainier. And this happened, years ago with my two sons. And we were, going up there to take pictures because I love taking photographs. My regular listeners know what I'm going to say. Why did I say customers? Listeners know what I'm going to say. But we were driving and they had a reader board on the side of the road. Hamburger and a soda for $1. And the place looked familiar because when I was a kid, I used to go quite often with my grandparents and parents crammed in their 56 Metropolitan Nash. Believe it or not, and we would go up to Mount Rainier. That's like being crammed in the car. And we would go there. I'd get the soda. They would get coffee. Well, here I was with my two sons, and we pull in there. And the first thing I noticed, Andrew, all the cars were old. We're talking like the early 60s. And I'm looking at it and going, wow. And then when we walked in the place, everybody was dressed like the early 60s. The women with the flower dress and all that. And we sat down and everybody was staring at us and we were kind of staring at them. And we sat and we ate. And then we left. And it was the most uncomfortable feeling I ever had in my life. A week later, Andrew, I was telling my sons, I want to go back and get more pictures of this one waterfall. Hey, I want to go too. I want that hamburger and soda for $1. So we load in the car. We go on the road. I'm going up and down this road. I can't find it. It's not there. And I made that turnaround back and forth at least 4 or 5 times. I finally stopped at the little store there. And I went in there and I said, hey, about a mile down the road, last week we stopped at the cafe, that place that has those hamburgers and soda for $1. And they said that place burnt down years ago. And what I'm still wondering, can you go back in time and or forward in time? And what happens if we stayed in there longer? Could I have been trapped in that time zone? That time?
I think possibly. But remember, you can't go back and change the past. You can only fulfill it because you're in the original past event. That's sort of the solution to the grandfather paradox.
Well, I don't know why I would be going in there for a hamburger and soda with my 2 kids. That was the strangeness to it. Now, again,
your story kind of reminds me of one that Dr. Bruce Goldberg, who was a dentist in the San Fernando Valley, once told me about 30 years ago. He had always wanted to go, I believe he grew up on the East Coast, and he'd always wanted to go to the Grand Canyon. And he finally got around to achieving that in his life in the 70s. But when he developed the film, they were all old cars from the 40s, as if he really had gone when he was a kid. So I think there's some aspect of the self-organizing universe that undergirds some aspect of these time slips. The classic, of course, I'd certainly like to discuss it, is the Montelomar time slip, You want to do that now?
Yeah, go ahead.
I really think it's an iconic case. Well, the Montelimar time slip is really a celebrated time slip. There were two British couples, the Gibneys and the Simpsons, who were going to be vacationing in Nice in the south of France. So they went across from England to France via the Channel, and they were driving across France, and they decided to stop at this bed and breakfast in the town of Montelimar. And they started to notice some very strange aspects. One, there were no glass windows on the building, just wooden shutters. The barmaid did not know, was simply not familiar with the modern French word for motorway. Two gendarmes from the 1890s came into the restaurant. And then after they finished breakfast for $4, a French country breakfast, they were charged 4 pence. I thought, my God, that's incredibly, inexpensive.
Oh yeah.
And then they left, and even though they were in a vehicle, they weren't noted to be driving an automobile, even though automobiles were just emerging, in the 1880s, 1890s. So they do their vacation in Nice, and they come back, and the bed and breakfast is not there in the same location of Montelimar. So they asked the locals, what happened to the bed and breakfast? And they said, that hasn't been there since the 1890s. So apparently they slipped, I believe it was the 1970s or 80s, back to the 1890s, and ate there, stayed overnight there, but it was not the current time. And so time slips happen. Now, I think we should put greater attention on that fact, because I believe what's happening is that the time-space continuum is damaged. Something is causing it to go cattywampus and misfire, essentially. So those are 4 classic time slips. But I think another aspect of this phenomenon of the time-space continuum essentially being broken are the so-called Mandela effects.
Oh, yeah.
In a Mandela effect, something that is historically true is misremembered by a critical mass of people. I thought maybe James could tell his story about the Monopoly man.
Well, James, can you tell your story real quick on that?
Yeah. I was always a big collector of Monopoly games from the 70s into the 80s. Always played it. And matter of fact, we got into early to mid 80s. There was a big Monopoly tournament, and me and 3 of my best friends, we were in it with a bunch of people. This went out for 3 months. You had to play best of 7 and best of 7. I mean, it was a long, drawn out thing. But anyway, every time I would get close to, I won the whole thing. But every time I would get close to winning, I would bust balls, because I'd always wear my lucky flannel shirt, and in my top pocket, I would have one of those eyepieces, and I would pull it out and put it in my eye, and and start busting balls like, hey, you're gonna pay double when you come to my park place, and just rub it in, because I was young and full of vinegar, so to speak. So I would keep busting balls with this eyepiece, and I would do this. And like I say, I won the whole tournament. When I won it, I really busted balls. I had that eyepiece in. I wore it halfway through the game. I was just so confident. And then you come to find out there's no such thing. That Monopoly guy has never had an eyepiece. That just boggles my mind, because I lived it. I'm telling you, in my lifetime in the 80s, the Monopoly game and that man had an eyepiece, and I used it to bust balls when I would win the Monopoly games. And now I got to try to process it never happened. So that freaks me out.
Well, James, I want to ask you this too. I remember the eyepiece myself.
A lot of people do.
I don't know.
I think all baby boomers do. I question a lot of members of our generation, and they remember it. I mean, in fact, many people commented, that's how I learned the word monocle. You know, hey, Mom, what's this eyepiece thing this guy's wearing? Oh, honey, that's a monocle. That's how I learned the word monocle. So I remember it. So I don't think it wasn't there. It was there. The question is, what made it go away? That's why I think we have damage to the time-space continuum.
What do you think could have? What could you think could have damaged it? Do you have any ideas?
I think the over 2,000 nuclear explosions around the world. I mean, most of the major nuclear powers have been blowing up A-bombs. And I believe that is injurious to the time-space continuum.
Well, Andrew, how about people, time travelers? You have gone back in time. Could people going back in time maybe have altered and caused this?
I mean, that's been suggested, but I really don't see the causation for that. Time travel was achieved through applied magnetism, and I think that these time slips and Mandela effects are something that's affecting the time-space continuum that's quite serious, quite powerful. One of my favorites, by the way, is I remember that the biblical phrase was that when Jesus comes back, the lion shall lay down with the lamb. And I've had people even search 150-year-old Bibles, and they all now say the wolf shall lay down with the lamb. Now, I remember as a Roman Catholic school kid in New Jersey in the 60s, there was kind of a rage where they would have Sunday school kids use felt to depict biblical scenes. And I remember that particular illustration, and that it was a lion and a lamb, you know, in felt. I see it right in front of me. And I know that in the 60s, that's what that biblical phrase read, and it no longer does.
That's interesting. Now, Andrew, we need to take a break. We'll be back in about 3 minutes with Andrew, and we're also going to open up the call lines. If you got a question or anything for Andrew tonight, please feel free to do that. We'll be right back, so stay tuned.
Coming to you from the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network newsroom, I'm Guy Ticker with the strange news. Scotland's Calvine UFO mystery has been solved at last. On August 4th, 1990, two young chefs had been walking in the Cairngorms National Park near Perth when they spotted a strange diamond-shaped object in the sky nearby. Terrified, the men had hid behind some bushes to observe the mysterious craft. A short time later, they heard the sound of an RAF jet approaching. The plane seemed to change course. Said one, quote, I discovered that the only other British Harriers were privately owned by BAE Systems, the defense contractor. They use their Harriers as multi-role defense test platforms, testing BAE advanced technology. He continued, quote, I dug deeper and found that Maruni Advanced Materials, based inside BAE HQ at Wharton, Lancashire, were probably working on an advanced stealth skin material for the USAF. I'm Guy Ticker. The Strange News is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. Do you have a strange story? Contact us at nightdreamstalkradio.com. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Nice used previously enjoyed vehicles. Come on down to We Fleece 'em You Motors, a division of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, where we treat all of our customers like family.
Dad?
Shut up, I'm working here.
Sorry.
Now then, all of our previously enjoyed used vehicles might even have an engine. And if you're asking about our warranty, we've got a warranty so ironclad, we fail to see any reason to put it in writing. And at We Fleece 'em You Motors, we stand by our unwritten warranty, no matter how long it takes for you to give up. So come on down to We Fleece 'em You Motors, formerly Miracle Motors, where if it runs, it's a miracle. If you can find a better looking car, I'll eat a bug. Hurry, hurry, hurry on down and get that dream car that runs in your dreams. We're located at 727 Paymore Fleecem Avenue, next to Great Fleecem Bank. Police not welcome. Are you into the paranormal? Then you have found the right place. Night Dreams covers the topics you want to hear. And Gary always has a great guest to take you for a real ride in talk radio. So, buckle up and let's go for that ride with Gary.
Well, JC, I think I'm going to go down to I Fleece 'em Motors and get one of those cars. I would like to get one that doesn't have a motor in it because that would save me a lot of gas mileage, and a lot of money on having to buy gas.
Yeah, you need to get one of those that Fred and Barney used to ride, the Flintstones.
Well, I was thinking to get a house on the hill, and then I could just roll down the hill and then to work. But then the other problem is, how am I going to get back up?
Yeah, that could be an issue, Gary.
Yeah, we have a caller here tonight for Andrew. Who do we have out there? Caller, are you there? No, we're not. The caller, are you still there?
Yes, I am. Can you?
Yes. Who do we have?
This is Tom.
Tom who? Go ahead. What?
The lead singer for Metatron Power and Light, Tom.
I never heard of them. What's your question for Andrew?
My question is actually a two-part question, and I was wondering, first of all, if your guest could please explain to the lay public the science involved, the methodology, if you will, for time travel. And number two, how long has this been in existence and how long has it been used?
Well, let me address the latter first. 8 modalities of time travel have been in existence since at least 1970. I would urge you to go onto the internet and look up my paper entitled The 8 Modalities of Time Travel, because you've asked a question that actually yields more of a multifarious answer. It depends on what form of time travel you use. The two most commonly used in DARPA's Project Pegasus was Tesla teleportation and a further elaboration of the chronovisors of Father Pellegrino Ernetti and Agostino Gemelli. Let me deal with the latter first. Essentially, they would put an electromagnetic signal through 8-sided bismuth crystals, and a cube of hologrammatic light would pop out in the bottom. Now, that was a looking glass, as it's often been called, when nobody was standing in that hologram. But if you were standing in the hologram and it was tuned in around you, you went to that location. So, for example, Project Pegasus sent me to Ford's Theater on April 14th of 1865 to try to see who shot Lincoln. Now, every time I was sent to to Ford's Theater that night, the minor things changed. You know, who was gathering tickets at the table in front of Ford's Theater, people who were walking through the lobby. One time it was this dandy talking to a damsel. Another time it was apparently the same woman and her sister. Okay, so what they found is that in the time-space continuum, small things are variable, but major sort of destined events are relatively predictable. In other words, 8 times in summer of 1971, when they sent me to see who shot Lincoln, Lincoln was shot. But virtually everything in the theater kept on changing. So they proved the existence of the multiverse. And it looks like God is quite a genius, because he's able to essentially imagine different realities in which the little stuff changes, but the big, the really momentous things don't.
Well, I got a question.
Why?
Well, Andrew, the question I have here, because what you said, I'm scratching my head on this one. What happens, when they sent you back to see Abraham Lincoln in the theater? What happens if you would have yelled and been there and yelled at him, "You're going to be assassinated"? And if it
that would have become part of the past. In fact, if I had shot him, that's what they would have been studying. You see,
but what happens if he wasn't? What happens if he wasn't ever shot? By you saying, "Hey, this guy's booth is or this person's gonna assassinate you." What happens if you would have said that, and his guards would have got around him, and he wouldn't have been shot? What would have happened? Would that change the whole timeline?
No. If I had told him he was going to be shot and to watch out, it wouldn't have worked. That's just the grandfather paradox in a different guise, a different factual context. I mean, history records that Lincoln was shot there. So history is the final judge of what happens, right? So even if I had tried to warn him, knowing that he would be shot, it would not have succeeded. As many times as I tried, in fact. And that is the answer to the Mandela effect. If you try to go back in time to kill your father, your grandfather, all kinds of seventh reality type of conjectures are made that, you'll blip out when you kill your dad before you're born and so forth. That's not what happens. Because you are destined to be born, and you were born later in time, you can make multiple attempts to kill your father before you're born and not succeed. It's very logical.
Well, the question I have for you too, though, let's say I went into a time machine, okay, and I went back in time to prehistoric time. Would that change my whole timeline of my whole family tree? Could they maybe not exist if I went back in time and for some reason I stayed there?
Well, it doesn't. Now, there were events in the program that we were quite troubled about. So, for example, when we were sent in 1971 and we arrived in Santa Fe in 1991, one of the girls in the program had not come back with us. So there were times when personnel were lost because they were basically pushed into a different timeline, okay, a different dimension, if you will. But if you're talking about the dimension that we're in right now, we know what history records. So every attempt to obviate that history cannot be a success. It cannot prevail in doing so.
Well, could we be, like Michio Kaku said, there's parallel universes. Could we be drifting in and out of different parallel universes, and that could be altering what's going on?
I think so, and I think it relates to this question of time slips and Mandela effects. Something is causing hard and fast data from the past that happened in the past, that's recorded in the present in history. Let me just give another example. I've also tried this on a lot of fellow baby boomers. California Dreaming by the Mamas and the Papas originally said, I walked into a church that I found along the way. I got down on my knees and I began to pray. Everybody agrees with that. We heard that from 1967, 68, probably thousands of times. Now on recordings from the Mamas and the Papas, not somebody doing a cover where they changed the lyrics, but the original recording by John and Michelle Phillips and Mama Cass and their colleague says, and I pretend to pray. These are actual changes to the substance of reality itself. And I don't believe that's being caused by time travel, because I can't see the mechanism. But I do believe blowing up, 2,400 nuclear bombs since Hiroshima could be the explanation. I think we should actually have an international agreement to just stop blowing up nukes. That, I think, would be strong enough to affect this.
Well, then why aren't ETs, there's a rumor going around, well, it's more than a rumor, right? They claimed that ETs have stopped missile launches, but, again, why don't they stop it? Okay, and then we wouldn't have to worry about nuclear war.
Well, this is one reason why I believe it is radiation that's causing these time slips, these Mandela effects, these apparent damaging results in the time-space continuum itself. I had an ET contact where the ET said, using sort of this voice modulating device to even communicate with me, he said, tell your government to stop blowing up nuclear weapons. And I said, why? And he said, because they're creating holes in space. I mean, think about that. How can you create a hole in space? But apparently you can. It's actually removing necessary data from the time-space continuum. I think it should be the focus of an international convention of some kind to eliminate this danger.
So it could actually alter major, but not just little time slips, but it could alter a major event then.
Well, imagine if it gets such a pandemic, such a proliferation of these time slips and Mandela effects that we have difficulty ordering food. In other words, we don't want life to become so complicated that we can't allow everybody to perform the basic functions they need to live and survive. And I think we should be concerned about this apparent damage to the time-space continuum. How does a song by the Mamas and the Papas change? How does a biblical passage? How do people stop at a bed and breakfast in Montélimar, France, and go back from the 1970s or 80s to the 1890s? I think we should be concerned about this. I think it's a major problem that we're not addressing it. It's probably much more dangerous and serious even than carbon and things that they're focusing on.
Well, here's another thing, Andrew. If you have a time slip, like you talk about that bed and breakfast, there's ones too in UK. I've talked to and interviewed a couple of people that claimed that people actually went back to medieval time and then came back and were total shock. But what happens if you did go back and for some reason you stayed at that bed and breakfast an extra day and you were trapped? How many people go missing? There's a lot of people going missing in this planet.
That's part of this. We may have a problem of missing individuals from going into different dimensions. Let me say this. I neglected to say that I investigated the Montélimar time slip back in the 1990s. And I had a strange event. I found that initially I found that the largest release of radioactive plasma in the history of the French nuclear program occurred in Montélimar right before that time slip. Then when I published that, I think it was on Jeff Rentz's website, it disappeared. It was scrubbed off the internet. So how does that connect? But people even remember that incident. They've shared with me. It's like, yeah, I remember that. You wrote about the fact that you found that the largest release of radioactive plasma in the history of the French nuclear, in fact, any nuclear program, had been released in Montélimar before that time slip, and then it disappeared from the internet. But that was part of the story I wanted to share, that what caused that? I mean, it could have been the French, I don't know, it could have been the nuclear industry, but that was a caveat that I wanted to add to that account.
But could we actually not be flesh and blood? A lot of people say we could be nothing more than a hologram or a data in some type of computer system somewhere.
Well, when I found that strange anvil-like thing when they spun me to induce out-of-body experiences in Pegasus, I was interviewed by a local nurse who had been an army nurse during, I think, the Korean conflict, named Stephanie Bindus. I see that the Hanover Township School District in New Jersey has actually created a scholarship in her honor. She said, yes, others are reporting that. We think it's the infrastructure propagating the hologram in which we find ourselves. We're calling it the Matrix. So the concept of the Matrix predates the film by the Wachowski brothers by 30 years. It was being used in Defense Department channels and was shared with me in, 1969 or 70. And wouldn't be released to 1999? The famous film with Keanu Reeves. But that's exactly what she said. That's a direct quote. We think it's the hologram propagating, we think it's the infrastructure propagating the hologram in which we find ourselves. We're calling it the Matrix. So the U.S. Department of Defense, at least at the highest levels of applied research and development, has known that we're living in a matrix for over 50 years.
That's scary. Then technically we're not even living.
Well, it begs the question what life is and what reality is. But they know that there's an aspect of a matrix-driven reality. And all they did is spin me to induce out-of-body experiences. And I saw, I was zooming along, and then I got to this machine. It was a black machine, sort of like an anvil, and I couldn't get past it. And she said, yes, others are reporting it. And by that she meant other kids in Pegasus who were being spun to induce out-of-body experiences like this, right? Yes, we think it's we think it's the infrastructure propagating the hologram in which we find ourselves. We're calling it the Matrix.
Now, I got another question for you. When you were in this program and you were time traveling or being transmitted to like Mars and all that, what did it feel like? Can you explain to the listeners what device it was, what happened, and what you felt like?
Going to Mars?
No, going back in time. Let's start with that.
Well, that's why I wanted to direct everybody to my paper on the internet, The 8 Modalities of Time Travel. There were 8 different devices, but none of them really produced any particular sensation. I mean, I was overwhelmed when I first went across country with my dad in a Tesla teleporter, because there you would jump through a field of radiant energy and you'd find yourself in a vortal tunnel surrounded by this bluish white light zooming through time-space. So it was sort of a head trip how violent we were, and some of the devices were moving, but there was no particular sensation, of nausea or anything like that.
Did you feel disoriented or anything for a moment or afterwards or anything?
Well, if you looked down, you felt like you were zooming down. So yes, I kind of learned that if I looked down in the Vortal Tunnel as we were zooming across the country, that was a bad idea because you felt like you were falling. I do remember seeing a Kansas farmer who saw something and was staring at the Vortal Tunnel as we zoomed past. But that was an exception. Now, if we didn't have enough juice to get across country, they would decant us to an area in Ohio, Solon, Ohio, to the Swagelock headquarters. In fact, we had a tour by Fred Lennon, the founder of Swagelock. But it was up the street from Swagelock, like in an open field, and then we would walk down the street and diagonally across the intersection and into the Swagelock building to take another teleporter, either back all the way across to New Mexico, or we were going from New Mexico. We had to get more energy to get to New Jersey.
Now, did they ever lose anybody being transported back in time or to a different location or anything?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to. We know that one girl from the program, I don't remember her name, but she was lost when they I call it the quantum excursion. When they accidentally sent us to 1991 in Santa Fe, and I had to kind of take over as the captain of Blue Team, because remember the kids were sort of panicking. And I said, look, when we finally get home, you'll be the same person, it'll be the same family, except your older siblings, for example, will be in college if we get back 20 years from when we were supposed to. But they'll probably be able to get us back not just to New Jersey, but 1971, and they were. But it was very violent. In fact, there was a huge sort of angel or entity of some kind who entered the Vortal Tunnel and protected us and shepherded us back to, 2,005 miles 20 years earlier. But yeah, we lost one of the kids on Pegasus that I know of. I mean, one of the children in my immediate group. There must have been others, of the 140 others.
Interesting. Here's one thing I've always been curious on time travel. Again, let's say a fly lands on you and you're being transported in time or to another location. Could that affect your DNA?
Well, they always told us to try to avoid as much effect on the environment as possible. But I didn't encounter anything of that kind.
I was always wondering, remember Star Trek, how they were transported to another planet and they stood on those transporters? I always wondered if insect got on them and they were broke down, okay, and then transported and then reassembled. That DNA from that insect could merge with their DNA, and then they would not maybe be the same as they were before.
Well, I think that science fiction has kind of confused us on this. If it's not recorded in the time-space continuum, if history doesn't record that was the effect of the past, it doesn't happen. There are many applications of the grandfather paradox, which I wish was called the father paradox, because it's really about killing your father before you were born. Will you exist? Will you just not exist? Will you blip out? And so forth. But the answer actually is very logical. Because you were born and as a result exist to even make the attempt, all of those efforts to kill your father before your birth have to fail.
So if I went back in time and I wanted to assassinate Adolf Hitler, then no matter how many times I've tried, it would not succeed.
Well, apparently it didn't, and you have to ask which Hitler. If it was Hitler, the obscure Vietnamese postcard painter, how would you know who he was? I mean, he has to have that fearsome, an awful rise to power as Der Führer to create a goal to kill Hitler. So I call that the kill Hitler paradox.
Yeah, but could it alter it where Hitler never became Hitler and then he became a sign painter instead?
Well, if you did, you wouldn't know who he was.
Well, it depends.
He wouldn't have it. He wouldn't have had the rise to power that would create the motive to kill Hitler. You wouldn't want to assassinate the obscure artist Alois Schicklgruber. So that's the answer, basically, to the kill Hitler paradox. Now, if you try to kill Hitler after his terrible rise to power, and as the Führer, it can't succeed because you know how far he went in the time-space continuum as the Führer without being murdered.
Interesting.
I mean, even von Stauffenberg failed, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
we would too, because that's what history records.
Now, Andrew, because of the radio stations, we have to end it on the top of the hour, but we can do a bonus 15 or 20 minutes on the app side if you want to continue.
Sure.
Okay. So again, let's say I went back in time to the prehistoric time where dinosaurs were roaming.
Which we did, by the way. We went back 100 million BC and saw dinosaurs.
What was it like?
It was awesome. I mean, they were both the ones with the the bulky body and the long neck, and like the old Sinclair gasoline station logo, and there were more velociraptor types. But we were told during those chronovisor probes, and it was really true of all chronovisor probes, if we weren't in for as long as 15 minutes, a density effect had not yet occurred, where if, for example, if those dinosaurs had stepped on us, our vision would be darkened by them coming over us, but then their foot would go past us without injuring us, even if it stepped on us.
I wouldn't want to try that, though.
No.
Not with my luck.
No, it was amazing to see the dinosaurs. It was very Jurassic Park sort of.
Okay, Andrew.
That was a fun trip.
Okay, Andrew, I'm going to put you on hold. We're going to do the Exto. I can't even talk straight. I'm so excited. We're going to play a little bit of music and then come back with the bonus material. So people out there, don't hang up. If you're watching us or whatever, or listening to us, stay there, because if you're on the app side, you're going to get a bonus material here. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. You're listening to me, Gary, on Night Dreamers Radio. If I'm still here, because I could be back in 1920. I don't know about that one.
Feels like that very
Now is the time more than ever to get that hometown water. Freshly recycled with that great recycled taste you will love. Just ask any smart person you know.
I love hometown water, and I'm a what word is this? Rhodes Scholar.
While you're getting that great tasting water, get a fresh brick of that great tasting meaty Soylent Green, made with real recycled man-made, we're not kidding, meat. That's always great tasting and good for you. It's endorsed by everyone.
Hello. As a 100% real female woman, I happily speak on behalf of all genuine non-male women-style ladies and say these recycled, easy-to-drink and eat products are totally great, and if you don't buy them, you'll be struck down and sentenced to eternal damnation. Thank you.
Recycled hometown water and recycled meaty Soylent Green man-made man meat is available at
in the 38 states with no common sense where this is still legal.
Your nearest farm fresh markets. Pick some up today.
Batteries not included.
Deep in the Amazon jungle, one man.
Hi, I'm Stan Gordon. Check out the Night Dreams Talk Radio with Gary the Big Guy.
Yeah, let me finish. One man.
Hi, I'm Mark Muncie. Check out Night Dreams Talk Radio with Gary the Big Guy.
Yeah, do you mind? One man, naked and afraid.
I'm losing my mind.
You and me both, sister. One man, Gary the Big Guy. No boats, no lights, no motor cars, not a single luxury.
Hey, any more and you'll have to pay a royalty.
Okay, that's it.
Hit it.
From the summer vacation studios deep in the Amazon jungle, from that tree right there. See at the top, he's swinging.
I'm losing my mind.
Twice? All right. Coming to you live, for now, on Night Dreams Talk Radio, naked and afraid, Gary the Big Guy Anderson.
Well, JC, I just quickly got the clothes back on because I was so naked and I was afraid. If you could go back in time, JC, even if it's for 5 minutes, what year would you want to go back and what would you want to try to change, even if you couldn't?
Well, I've always had fondness for 1870s.
1870s? Why?
Well, I don't know. I kind of like to have my 44 Magnum revolver, and either that or Victorian London or maybe over there with Count Dracula.
Yeah, but if you go back to that time frame, especially if you went back to the Western, the odds are you would get a bullet. Especially with your personality, somebody would give you a blowjob, and I'll tell you, it won't be down in the Bronx.
Yeah, it's bad news, but at least I'll go with my boots on, right?
I would want to go back to biblical times, and I would like to see Jesus.
Yeah, well, allegedly they got the Crononizer that they witnessed that.
Yeah, but that's been proved false, though, too. That. Again, you're looking at smell-o-vision. That J.P. Patches in Seattle when I was a kid had a TV. He could actually see the audience and go forward and backward in time. That never really existed, but I could be totally wrong. Am I wrong about that, Andrew?
Well, the Chronovisor existed. In fact, my dad and his team at Sandia got scenes of Jesus' ministry, crucifixion, and resurrection. And that's been relatively rendered somewhat obscure in my material, but I've kind of featured it prominently.
Interesting.
So a major aspect of Jesus' life in a country that was founded as a Christian country, which my mentor Norman Cousins proved in his book, In God We Trust, that all of the founders except for Franklin were charismatic Christians. But no, that's not a myth. I saw Chronovisor images of Jesus' crucifixion that were so hideous, they were difficult to watch. It was even more violent than depicted by Mel Gibson in The Passion of the Christ.
Yeah, that really had people up in arms when that movie came out. Now, you think about things like that, but again, going back in time, if you got stuck there, we could.
You can get stuck in the past, time traveling to the past or the future. And we had to actually memorize the site plan of Santa Fe. So if we got lost physically upon arriving, but also we had to rehearse what we would say if we were trapped in time in the past, for example, so that, if we jumped from 1971, it was 1791, because of course Santa Fe was, the New Mexico territory for like 400 years. And so we were coached to find a Catholic prelate, a wealthy businessman, a county sheriff, somebody of some stature and responsibility in Santa Fe territory, and tell him that our parents had died coming to New Mexico, and would he adopt us? But it would really be a matter of being adopted by a reliable individual in the past. That was always a clear and present danger. By the way, I forgot of one other Mandela effect that I'm quite proud of.
Okay, go.
Well, I went back in time to watch the Gettysburg Address of President Lincoln, and that's where I was captured in the Josephine Cobb image, which depicts me on the left side foreground of that photograph. So I had to memorize, I don't remember it anymore, but I had to memorize the Gettysburg Address. And what I remember is that Lincoln said that they have thus far so nobly carried on. That they have thus far so nobly advanced. But if you consult the Gettysburg Address, which I think is either chapter, episode 18 or 19 of Ken and Rick Burns' classic documentary, The Civil War, released in 1989, he has Lincoln saying that they have thus far so nobly carried on, which is not even grammatical. So that's another Mandela effect, unless there was a decision by the filmmaker to take some other draft of the Gettysburg Address, maybe something else that Lincoln wrote on the envelope or something on the train into Gettysburg. But that is not consistent with the Gettysburg Address as we learned it in school.
Very interesting. Now, like Warren Buffett, right? Could he have been a time traveler? And, with his knowledge, what the stocks to buy, what business to buy, and got his wealth that way?
Certainly possible. I mean, the principals on Project Pegasus, like my father, could only invest in Texas and Oklahoma oil and natural gas stocks. They could not invest in other stocks during that era. They didn't want any of the principals on Pegasus to privateer based on their knowledge of the future. It would have been nice if they could have, because my dad could have put all our money in, Apple Computer or Microsoft or something, just betting the whole farm on those stocks right before they went into their initial public offerings. But they were not allowed to.
Well, you mentioned Microsoft. I happen to knew Bill Gates years ago before he turned out to be what he's like. I had an electronics store. Me and my wife, besides doing radio, we had a small electronics store on Northrop Way in Bellevue, and he came in with his co-partner. And that's when he went out and bought DOS. It was called Seattle DOS. And he bought it for $100, and then he marketed it to, IBM. And that's what the computers all ran on. And they became multi-billionaires off of $100. And I'm wondering if that could have been related to time travel, knowing what to buy and going and what to do.
I did have one story brought to me. I don't even think I recorded the name of who called me, but that was back in 2021. A couple suddenly appeared as if they were being teleported or chronovized to his location. And it was a man and a woman. And he reports that they said, no, let's not use this guy. Let's use Elon. Now, it could be an apocryphal story because there's a lot of, I mean, Elon Musk has a lot of hemo, and so he comes up a lot in such stories. But I have taken that account that he was claiming that they decided to use Elon. And so the implication is that some of these gajillionaires of our era in the high technology sector, maybe their knowledge was implanted from the future that led to their great fortunes. Certainly possible.
Could you imagine going back to the 30s, when the stock market collapsed, and then, afterwards knowing what stocks to buy? I mean, can time travel be used for the evil that it could represent too?
Well, Courtney M. Hunt of the CIA answered that question for me when I asked whether privateering was going on. He said, yes, somebody just came through with a big investment in airline stocks. So I think that the discipline by which Pegasus was being administered kind of fell apart a little bit, and privateering was going on.
Now, we had Pegasus in this country. How about other countries? Did they have, and do they have the capability of doing time travel? And could their and you being time traveled or teleported, could it actually interfere with each other?
Well, I left government service, 40 years ago, in 1984. I was in Pegasus from 1968 to 72, and then Mars, 1980 to 84. So I don't really have any sources for that. A lot of the principals are deceased. So I don't know where other governments are at. I do know that we were trying to stay 2 steps ahead of the Russians. So I think the world power that has the most advanced technology besides the United States is Russia. I can share that. But I've heard rumors that a number of countries have been experimenting with time travel. China, Japan, India, France, England. Bernard Mendes claimed that the British had the aeronautical repositioning chambers to get to Mars. And of course, we saw British and Russian teams there. And also, I guess it was the teleporter, maybe chronovision. So I think it's not just an American fascination. There are 6 or 7 different world powers who've been actively investigating it.
Interesting. Now, the theory is you can't go back in time, which you have proved you can, but they say you can go forward in time.
You can do both. I mean, certain axiomatic claims are made, and I just don't know on what basis they're made. In fact, I was usually going back in time, right? I went back to meet Washington, and I was the American who advised General George Washington to retreat his troops from New York Harbor in August of 1776. But then on November 5th of 71, I was in a small group of American children who were chronovized to the future. So, I mean, we've done the latter since 1971.
That's interesting because, again, if you could teleport forward and not backward, how do we know that they're actually being teleported forward? Because then we wouldn't actually know if they couldn't come back to tell us. Now, we got a caller in. Who do we have? Caller?
This is Shane.
Okay, okay, Shane. What's your question for Andrew?
I had a question for Andrew. If he's seen any entities, maybe interdimensional entities, through his experiences and his travels.
Well, in the Josephine Cobb image, there is an interdimensional entity of some kind. I would just urge you to scrutinize that image. It's taller than human beings, that's for sure. So I believe that was an interdimensional entity that was examining me. as a child born in 1961, visiting, November 19th of 1863 from 1972. I had a lot of contact with paranormal entities during the time I was time traveling, maybe because such entities live in different parts of the time-space continuum that we usually don't access. I was being visited. I believe I told about my experience with that ghost when I was in the 5th grade, that boy who played with me.
No, you haven't. Go ahead.
Well, I had gotten a game for my birthday in September, or maybe Christmas, called Coyote Sam, and you had to take one of those plastic darts, and if you hit his belt buckle, it would cause his pants to fall down. He was wearing boxer shorts with hearts. And I went up after lunch, up to the bedroom that I shared with my 2 older brothers, by myself. There's nobody up there. And I had 3 lucky hits. I knocked Coyote Sam's pants down 3 times in a row.
I remember
and
that.
when I did, this little kid jumped through the wall and beckoned for me to give him the gun. I did. And then he knocked Coyote Sam's pants down 3 times. And then he laughed and handed me the gun and jumped through the wall. And my mom said, "Come on, boys, time to go back to school." So she must have heard both of us. She said, "Boys." And my friend Johnny from up the street was out on the step looking into our house. So it couldn't have been Johnny. I have no idea who he was, but that bedroom was at about 25 feet above ground. So even if he had been an adult who could, use some device to jump safely, it was not possible for somebody to come through the wall, and at that height.
Well, can I ask you a question? Okay, a lot of people think ghosts are paranormal spirits, but could ghosts actually be people time traveling, going from, or maybe somehow stuck in the Matrix?
That's possible. I didn't think about that. I mean, there's residual hauntings, quantum, and kindred spirits. Spirits that are trapped here as a result of not going to the light upon death.
Well, that again,
there's a number of different.
I was just thinking that maybe they were time traveling and they got stuck. Yeah, interdimensional.
It's certainly possible.
Well, it'd stand for a lot of
reasons. A 4th category.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, like Michio Kaku said, we're very close to cracking another dimension. And when we crack this next dimension, parallel universes would exist. So again, could we actually alter our timeline totally by teleporting?
Well, one thing I know we have not really answered. I was in Nina Byers' office at UCLA when she opened up the evidence that had been sent to her that an electron can be in 2 different places at the same time. Now, the modern quantum physicists had said that the old understanding of reality is that if 2 people in a common experience disagreed about what happened, one was wrong or both were wrong. But the new explanation is that both can fundamentally disagree and both be right. Okay? So that's not so much an admission of dimensionality as much it is that literally people can have a different understanding about what reality encompasses. When I've looked at the pretty substantial sort of Biden-Trump kind of polar opposition in our modern American society, I often wonder, are these people viewing the same reality? In other words, is somebody else's Biden the Biden that I'm receiving information of? because I've considered him utterly incompetent. I consider him demented, and he needs to be replaced. But the Bidenistas seem to be drinking from a different cup. Some of them that I've known have been very intelligent and reasonable people, and I don't understand what they're seeing that they think is at all presidential. You know, the invasion of the country, the damage that's been done to the economy, and so forth. I'm not really seeking to make a political point, but just I really thought long and hard about the possibility that the reason people have these fundamental disagreements with us is because they're not perceiving the same reality. And since Dr. Byers showed me that electrons can be in two different places at the same time, that strongly implies that we're not drinking from the same cup. We're not perceiving the same reality. So I really think we have to be as kind and as forgiving and as cooperative with others as possible. Because if the time-space continuum is broken, that's going to intensify. But it was already true. How could the quantum physicists say that two people can fundamentally agree about a shared experience and both can be right? You know, that's the classic extrapolation of that thing we used to wonder about when we were kids. You know, is your orange perhaps my purple? Okay. It seems to be going on.
Well, you know, it makes sense. Just like JC was mentioning, Ed McMahon, you know, was going around and handing checks out. This is back in the 70s. And a lot of people say it never happened, but then I distinctly seen it on YouTube. I Googled it. It was there. But then again, you know, maybe I see it and then you don't see it because it didn't exist.
Right.
You know, that maybe
I mean, maybe to some Bidenistas at least, he's as youthful and cogent as, let's say, a Bill Clinton. Albeit a Democrat, but it's possible.
Well, maybe Bill Clinton nowadays.
Yeah, but I mean, we often think that we have fundamental disagreements with others. Maybe we have a fundamental lack of correspondence to the fundamental perceptions. And that's going to be difficult to deal with. I think it's going to require the best of us.
We need to go, I think, honestly, in the early 60s is when this whole thing broke. Because in the 60s, I think we went crazy. We have. Look at everything that's happened from the mid-60s to now. We were on a path where everybody knew each other. Everybody was friends with each other. And that was for going back, you know, in history. And now nobody knows anybody. I think we went off on another timeline.
It's possible. Interestingly, Madeline Engel's book, A Wrinkle in Time, was published in 1962. And when I asked my dad about all the coincidences between the program and that book, he said, oh, yeah, we call that disinformation. So that means that Pegasus was active by the early 60s. Maybe it was time travel that screwed it up.
It could be. Can you also, for the listeners, explain, when you went in there, what do you remember the equipment looking like?
Well, the chronovisors had a crystal array in the ceiling. They were putting an EM signal through 8-sided bismuth crystals, and a cube of white hologrammatic light was popping out. And if you were inside of that when it was generated, you went to that place. That's how they sent me 8 times to Ford's Theater, for example. The teleporters were sort of elephant tusk-like objects about 8 feet tall and about 10 feet apart on the ground. And they would cause a field of radiant energy to cascade downward as these little squiggles of bluish green light would go across the field of radiant energy, and then you would jump through that, going at least a meter per second, so you wouldn't be dismembered. And then you'd find yourself in a whitish blue field of, of the Vortal tunnel per se, and you were flying through time-space.
Was it anything like, you remember the TV show Stargate? You go into this thing and you go through like a tunnel?
Yeah, but I think that most of the media productions have certainly, like Fringe, which borrowed from my material pretty extensively, suggest you could just walk through the field of radiant energy. If you did, you would be dismembered. And they showed us that by taking like a broom and pushing it through and seeing how violently it was cascaded across the room. So we had to jump through the field of radiant energy to avoid injury.
Now, was there anybody it didn't jump good enough and was like mangled up?
No, we just had to go a meter per second because we were always taught to do it competently. There was no injuries that I knew of. I don't think any of the 140 kids involved had grievous injury. There was a girl who was blinded by looking up at the crystal array producing the chronovisor, and I wonder today whether my visual impairment was caused by that, but not by looking up on it, by just being in the chronovised scenes.
Now, before this, before you went into this, did you have to like have a special disinfectant type of shower or anything, or special clothes or anything to be able to do this, or you just came off with your street clothes and teleported?
I would be in my street clothes or sometimes period clothing. Like when they sent me back to Gettysburg, 1863, I was dressed as a Union bugle boy.
I was wondering.
No, there was no special substance.
I have a time machine I bought from Gibbs back years ago. Me and Art Bell bought. Well, he got his for free. I had to pay $250. I've never plugged it in. I dissected it, and I don't know if I'd ever want to plug it in. But you think that time machines are available to the wealthy people, that maybe they have them and can go back?
Possibly, but I wouldn't experiment with it, because we're talking about. I've tried to emphasize this so I don't get anybody in trouble, but I think we have to get our minds around the fact that the physicists working on Pegasus, these were the leading physicists in the United States of America. Dr. Harold M. Agnew was the quintessential Project Manhattan participant. He did virtually everything in the quest to build the atomic bomb. So you're talking about individuals who not only understood Tesla's theories and strategies for doing this, but had his documents. They had a special clearance, special cards they could use at Lano to review something in Tesla's paperwork. So these people who think they're going to reinvent time travel, I think they're actually taking their lives in their hands, and I've urged them to consider that before doing something.
Well, there's a lot of people still, are trying to, perfect time travel. There was a Professor Anderson back in the 90s that claimed he was very close to, perfecting time travel.
Yeah, are you talking about David Lewis Anderson?
Yes.
Yeah, he called me and said, or emailed me and said, it looks like we had contact with different parts of DARPA's experimentation with time travel.
I don't know.
And that's something I'd like to emphasize here. Alfred Weber has written a book called The Chronarchy, suggesting that there was enough project continuity to create a manipulation of American society or world society with time travel. And I just don't think that's happened. They certainly haven't contacted me. I don't believe there was enough continuity, enough coherence to set up a chronography. I'm not superimposing a novel idea and showing Alfred's characteristic creativity, but I don't think it's a danger. Because if there had been, they would have contacted me, and they have not. My entire truth campaign was my own decision. And by the way, Richard Hoagland has claimed I'm CIA. Well, I revealed that during the period I was in Pegasus, 1968 to 72, and going to Mars, 1980 to 84, I had contact with CIA, but with a lot of other agencies. I was officially listed as a Navy lieutenant under an assumed name, but my birth name was listed over at the Naval Investigative Service in Upland, California, right there in Foothill Boulevard. So I haven't been working for the CIA. Even if I had been, I stopped working for the government 40 years ago. I was a CIA whistleblower and critic who was bringing this to the attention of the American people because I thought there were constitutional problems they would be creating. Maybe they have done so. But I have not been working for the CIA. That's really an unfair accusation in light of the fact that I was attacked and I lost a substantial amount of vision and kidney function when I was attacked by a DEW after running for president to bring this to the attention of the American people. So it's just not true. And by the way, a number of the CIA people I knew over the years were fine Americans. It's that post-Vietnam kind of cynicism that would cause Hoagland to even make such an accusation against me. I'm a free and independent spirit. I've been supporting myself as a lawyer at the federal and state level in the state of Washington the entire time that I've been running my truth campaign.
Now, John Lear claims that, we have on the backside of the moon alien bases and that we don't send them there by rocket. This is what he said before he passed on a conversation I had with him, that they were teleported.
Well, John also claimed that he was in Pegasus. I don't remember meeting him in the program. I don't necessarily doubt it. I think he had a lot to share. I would leave others to make their conclusion. But it's certainly possible. And by the way, the fact that we're not being visited by spaceships, but time ships, I think has to be considered. In other words, when a UFO spins into our local area of time-space, maybe they are time machines, not spaceships. I think that needs to be considered.
That's possible, but the speed it would be required would be, huge.
Well, I think the time and the speed that would be required to move across interstellar space is so prohibitive that we have to seriously consider whether we're being visited not by extraterrestrials in spaceships, but interdimensionals in time ships.
It's possible.
Certainly, because I think they could be saving a lot of travel, not having to travel far at all, if they found a way to spin from their dimension into adjacent dimensions. They may just be picking up speed and spinning around in a circle and then shooting into our dimension.
What is your feeling? Do you think time travel has advanced so far since you were in Pegasus that it could be totally what's causing this whole time shift and everything that's going on?
I don't think applied time travel is causing the problem of damage to the time-space continuum embodied in time slips and the Mandela effect that we discussed tonight. I think it's radiation. I had that warning from an ET, and they're clearly more intelligent than human beings. At least most of them are. That's my conviction. I think we need an international convention to stop blowing up atomic bombs, nuclear weapons, if you will. Well, I mean, Senator Alan Cranston, when he was still alive, he told me that the new generation of American submarines had as much destructive capability if a Hiroshima blast was blown up every day for 13 years. I mean, the destructive capability of nuclear weapons is just off the chart.
Well, I don't know if you know who Professor Stephen Starr is. He's been on our show numerous times, and he wrote a book about nuclear war and what it would do. And that is what is really scary when you think about it. You know, a detonation of any current nuclear device we have now would actually take out up to 300 square miles. The initial blast would be about 5 miles, then go out to 50, and then, you know, up even over 100-mile range, you're not going to survive. Then it also would have effects up to 300 miles. It's not like Hiroshima.
Yeah, I mean, the destructive capability and the range is just off the charts, and it's a huge thing to contemplate. I try not to think about it. And there was a time in college in which I had trouble even sleeping. I was working for the Nuclear Freeze in California and hobnobbing with its sponsors, and I got engrossed in the problem of nuclear proliferation. It's a huge problem.
Well,
it's kind of interesting that they put Obama in a nuclear seminar with Brzezinski, and they put me with the great Norman Cousins. That could have been intentional. They wanted to produce, whether I'm going to reach the presidency or not, maybe they wanted to produce presidents who would understand the danger of nuclear weapons and not use them.
I don't know. That's not even us we have to worry about. You know, things, I'm not going to get political, but look what's going on in North Korea right now. Look what's going on in the Middle East, and look what's going on in Ukraine. And that has got me alarmed, because eventually it's going to escalate. And people are naive if they don't think that's not going to escalate at one point.
I think we need to examine actually whether World War III has already begun.
I think we're on the start.
China weakening up the American population with COVID-19.
Well, I don't know. Can we go back in time and try to alter it? I don't know anymore. I'm really confused. Before I let you go, because boy, we were on longer than I thought. Going into this room or building for time travel, how big was the device? I mean, how many people were working in it to be able to go to do it? Was there a lot of computers and all this stuff? Can you explain that to the listeners?
It looks sort of like mission control in the space program. There were people at different consoles and so forth, but not really that many. The number of people working on Pegasus was delimited to about 25. And I was in a meeting between Dr. Agnew and my dad where he even encouraged him not to save receipts of people's lunches for tax purposes because they didn't want to create a paper trail. But of course, Project Manhattan had 64,000 or 84,000 employees, and they kept it secret during the entire war. So secrets can be kept.
But how do you keep kids? Okay, you had 100 and some kids in Pegasus. How do you keep them quiet? How do you keep them from not, kids like talking. How do you keep them from not spilling the beans?
We were whiz kids. We had to prove out under Project Talent as unusually intelligent or psychically gifted or both. You see? I mean, I don't know about the IQs of the other participants, but mine is 168. So we were obedient kids. We were not cut up. So.
Now, again, when you guys were recruited, and I know how you got recruited, it was through, your father, what he was doing, and they came up to him, and then he got you involved into it. But how did they select these kids in for Pegasus?
Through Project Talent. That was a program that came out of Admiral Hyman Rickover's books and work in the late 1950s. He was concerned that he was not getting talented enough plebes at Annapolis to turn into nuclear sub-captains. I'm talking the same issue. What to do with the bomb, right? And so Project Talent was begun to give us, what was it? It was a week and Saturday morning of testing. Remember, after that, Gary, we would get the 4-colored pen.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the ballpoint pen with what? Black, blue, green, and red ink?
I remember that.
In a plastic bag with our name on it. Why was that necessary if they're giving away free pens? By the way, the reason that was necessary is all of those pens had transponders to see which kids were being contacted by ET. At least that was shared with me by CIA. But no, they were testing all the kids in the country, and they came up with 140 that they wanted to use.
And how many was lost? So we talked about that. There was 1 or 2, but you would think out of 140 kids that were used in Pegasus, they had to be more than 1 or 2 accidents during that whole time.
Yeah, I know. I know 1 was lost in our group of 8. I don't know which of the other, 132 kids were lost, but undoubtedly some were as well.
Now, could you have been transported in time? Could you have refused to come back? Could you have done something to alter it and stay there?
Yes, but by the way, if you were, the bottom line is you can't go back in the past to change it. So that's the answer to the question you asked about 10 minutes ago.
Right.
You can't change the past by visiting it because you're in the past.
But let's say we're back there though, and you decide, you know what? I don't want to go back. I like this.
I could have stayed in Washington's time. I certainly would have enjoyed participating in the American Revolution more directly. I mean, I'm proud that I did brief him, and he did retreat his troops from New York Harbor at great cost, 300 West Virginia sharpshooters. But yes, I could have stayed in colonial times. I would have enjoyed it. And being born in Morristown and growing up in Morris Plains and meeting Washington, I really had a link to that time. So I could have stayed in the 1770s, clearly.
Now, when you were in Pegasus, I know your dad is the one that got you, helped get you involved into it. How did your mother know? And did any other family members know that you were in this program? Or was that kept?
No, my 4 older siblings knew nothing. My mother was told that I was being put in a high IQ experimental program being sponsored by Harvard College, but that was just a cover story to tell the mothers.
Very interesting. Well, our time is up. Is there anything you want to say to the listeners?
No, just that I think we really have to get a handle on what's causing this damage to the time-space continuum. I mean, it seems like somewhat of an obscure issue, but in my experience, it's becoming more commonplace. And the danger is if things become completely disordered. Certainly if circular causation becomes commonplace and effect precedes cause, I mean, life is going to become very difficult.
Yeah, and it actually is.
I think we really want to study this and find out what's causing it. It could be a field of supercharged particles that we're going through in space, and we don't have to worry about it. It'll abate after we get through that. It could be radiation. It could be ETs manipulating our reality. Could be God changing reality. But the bottom line is things are being irrevocably changed, and it's not just a problem of memory. It's a problem of the substance of those events. In other words, it's the mamas and the papas singing, and I pretend to pray. They never sang that. The very substance of their song has changed.
And just think what else has changed. If you think about that Mama and Papa's, and that song, which is a classic, what other things out there have changed and been altered?
That's the thing. And also, because of what I talked about with the great Dr. Nina Byers of UCLA, actually a mathematical physicist, showing me that one electron can be in two different places. That's what she showed me. And I said, couldn't that just be another electron or a time-lapse effect? And she said, no. These pictures were both taken at exactly the same time. We have a method to do that. And this electron is showing up over here in point A and over here in point B. So I think people need to be a little bit more tolerant of claims of unusual experience. There's still that pattern of what I call obligatory skepticism in our culture, kind of fomented by our kind of Darwinian scientific infrastructure, the evening news, and other cultural patterns. But I have given 750 interviews on radio and maybe 15 network TV shows. I just appeared last year on October 13th on the second show on the History Channel to be hosted by the great William Shatner. I've earned my props for what I've been talking about. It's no longer credible to say, I don't believe Andy. I have published dozens and dozens of what I call Project Pegasus proofs on my podcast, The Quest for Truth. What we now have to figure out is what's going on with quantum physics. Far beyond my power to add or detract. We don't know. We don't have explanations for what we discussed tonight, either the time slips or the Mandela effects. What's causing them? Shouldn't we find out? Isn't it good to know what the universe is made up of? I think it is.
Well, the time slips keep going on, and I tell you, it could really alter our future. That's the scary part.
So I think we have to blame, excuse me, we have to blame less, excuse me, and explain more.
We do. Okay, well, Andrew, I'm going to let you go. I want to thank you so much, and you get well, okay?
I'm working on it, Gary.
Okay, my friend, you take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, JC, we're going to come right back, and we're going to have a wrap-up of the show. So get ready, JC, because I got some questions for you.
I'm ready.
Coming to you from the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network newsroom, I'm Guy Ticker with the strange news. Australian woman wins world's ugliest lawn competition. An Australian woman's bandicoot-ravaged yard, Google it, was dubbed the winner of the first ever World's Ugliest Lawn competition. Kathleen Murray of Sandford, Tasmania, was named the winner of the contest, which was organized by the town of Gotland in Sweden. I'm Guy Ticker. The Strange News is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. Do you have a strange story? contact us at nightdreamstalkradio.com.
Well, we're talking about time slips and things that, maybe have been altered. But, you were mentioning on chat, like Ed McMahon. But if when you mentioned that, I was listening to Andrew, I went on to YouTube and I found Ed McMahon.
Yeah, and it's weird because sometimes you go to look and it says it's never happened. So it's kind of like what he says. Is there different realities blending back and forth? It's weird.
It is. It could be. And what maybe is being altered for me might not be altered for you. And what's being altered for you might not be altered to somebody out on chat.
Yeah, exactly. And so now you've got 7 billion people that these things are yo-yoing back and forth. That could cause a lot of chaos somewhere down the road, Gary.
But what really, honestly, what I think about so many times, that time with my 2 kids, and going back, whatever that time slip was, whatever you want to call it, going back in time, I mean, honestly, I would think I was having to break down. But my 2 sons remembered it so dearly, and the one son has passed on, but my other son remembers it clearly, and he's the one that said, "Hey, let's go back and get those hamburgers next week for $1." I mean, the thing is to go back and see something that, an experience of something in that nature, to go into a parking lot and look at old classic cars, which evidently weren't classic to those people, to walk into a restaurant that looked like it did when I was a kid, 8 years old, 9 years old, going in that Nash with my grandma, grandpa, my mom, and dad, and stopping in there for coffee. It's ironic. Was it meant for me to go back there and it was closure or something? But again, the people, it was real. I mean, I remember the taste of the hamburger. I remember how the waitress. I remember looking at the person cooking the food, and I remember those people staring at us like that. Because we were freaky to them. Could you imagine that? The same way they were freaky to us.
Right. Your clothes and your car were all like probably concept ideas, like futuristic, even though they really were.
Well, they were, and again, they were gawking at our car. Mm-hmm. And, and I was looking at their cars. Ooh, hey, look at that. That's a 59 Chevy. There's a 60 Chevy. It was like, wow. I first thought it was a club when we went in there. And then I realized a lot of these people were older, and no way. And their demeanor. I'm surprised that they didn't call the police on us when I went to pay for it.
Yeah, with all that counterfeit money, that's futuristic days.
Well, the money back then didn't look that compared to money now. But I mean, could you imagine when they were counting the money that night? Oh my God, here's the dollar bills from the 70s here. 80s, whatever it was.
Yeah, right. Like what's this Joker trying to do? Crazy. But you should have grabbed some change because there was a lot of real silver floating around back then. Even.
Oh yeah, don't even go there about the silver.
But yeah, it's true. But you mentioned that. One time I think I told you before, about 7 years ago, I was riding my bike. Now this bike, Gary. It was like the old style bike. You put your pedals backwards to use the brakes. There's no hand brakes or anything, no gears or anything. I'm riding summer day, middle of the afternoon, behind an alley, coming home. In the middle of the alley, it was like I hit a invisible wall, and the front wheel, like you hit it, and I went flying over. Did I have another little universe bleed in? I hit a wall because there was nothing there. That was freaky.
It would be, but here's the thing. You remember the show The Fly and the remake of it where the guy was transporting in time and a fly landed into his device and he didn't realize it?
The Fly, yeah.
Yeah, The Fly, and then he started altering. That's the part with time travel. I mean, if you are traveling, again, they would have to be breaking up your molecules of your body and then reassembling them. I mean, what happens if you have like lice, for example? You could come back as a giant lice.
Gary, we had a whole monologue show one time, me and you, about what if you had your girlfriend's blonde hair on your sleeve,
hopefully I don't come back with bigger boobs. I'll tell you that.
Or your dog's pet hair, or any kind of DNA. Lord, you know how much DNA is floating around in the air all the time?
Oh, I know it. And that's scary. But again, I always wondered that if you are time traveling, that's why I asked Andrew, did they actually sterilize you or do anything before you time traveled? Because I would think if they're breaking you up and then transporting you, in time, or even transporting you across the country, if any bacteria, if anything was on you, it could actually alter your DNA.
Here's the other. You can't even compute the trillions and trillions of atoms in each body, and they all got to be put together in the exact right way.
Could you imagine your penis on the backside?
Or, you got a longer nose than you should have.
Yeah, well, that's just it. And again, you think about all this stuff like Star Trek, about being transported. It makes me no sense that they had no way to sterilize themselves before they were transported. The same way with time travel. They say that you can't go back in time, but you can go forward in time. That's why I don't buy that. Because there is time slip. Something is going on. So when you got these scientists saying you can only go forward in time, but you can't go backward in time, that doesn't make logical sense to me in my little teeny brain of a IQ of 152. It don't make sense.
Well, some scientists say you can go back in time, but most of them, you're right, say you can't. But listen, I lived in a reality that there was a monocle eyepiece.
I remember that, though. So are we in the same reality? We must be. We're talking together.
And here's the thing. It's erased from all the games. It never happened. You can't find it nowhere. No matter how old of a game you find, it's like it disappears from the game. It's freaky, I'm telling you.
Yeah, and why aren't people calling in? We got a lot of people on chat, but they're afraid to call in. They don't want people to know that they're listening to Night Dreamers Radio. That's what it is. But, again, if you could go back in time, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I want to go back to prehistoric times. I want to look at these meat eaters. I want to look at dinosaurs. I want to look at a 20-foot cockroach. I want to see this stuff. I want to see the lush vegetation, the clean air, because a lot of people don't realize if you go back that time, the oxygen level was so high. That's what created these monsters. If that's why they can't even exist now, because the oxygen level is way down compared to prehistoric times. I want to see that. I want to taste it. I want to taste that luscious fruit on the vine.
I got a feeling if you was back there, they would be tasting you as a little meal.
Yeah.
You'd be chased around by everything.
Now, when you think about, Bigfoot and all these other things are going through different dimensions and being able to do that, maybe they have the capability of time travel or teleportation, being teleported.
Or maybe, listen, here's a good theory too. All out in these woods national forests and different places, maybe there's just natural portals. That's why some people come up missing, and why some people report seeing pterodactyls. Maybe they're coming through, or there's something going on anyway.
Well, we already know that because, again, how many people go vanishing? And that's why I was curious, too. If you can teleport in time and go back, this is the part they say, if I go back in time and kill my father, okay, then I wouldn't exist. But is that true? No, again, it's the scientists with their calculations.
No, that can't happen, because if you go back in the history, it's like a circle.
If you go back in history, you should then be able to alter history. If you go and physically are transported back to 1940, you're in 1940, and if you decide not to come back, then you have the capability of altering the timeline.
Right. And it's already planned. That you've done that, so in the future it's already been done. It's like a circle that just keeps going around and around. You get what I'm saying?
Well, that's only one theory.
That's the only theory.
No, there isn't the theory. I really think you could go back and the timelines can be altered and changed. So if you can go back to 1940 and you decide, I'm going to change it, that doesn't mean the timeline was that way. You're going back to 1940 and you're altering it on yourself.
Then you're going to another. When you do that, you're into another universe.
No, how do you know that?
Because it's logic.
What logic do you have to stand by that?
I can't explain it to you. I guess
you're going by your gut feeling.
No, it's.
Oh, come on! If I could go back to 1940, right? And alter, like, okay, I know what stocks to buy. Okay, and I become a billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I changed the timeline. Because if I didn't go back, it would have never happened.
Right, and because you did, it did happen, so the future is going to circle back around again because you were supposed to go back and do that.
Now, how do you know I was supposed to gone? I could have been a bad boy and decided to do it on my own.
Okay. Oh, you're funny.
You are too.
I know.
Yeah. Look at Ed McMahon on YouTube.
I'm telling you, I used to watch him in the 80s. Me and my mom would see him on the commercials. He would knock on.
He's there. I just watched it while you posted it up on YouTube. I went there and Ed McMahon for the Clearinghouse, and guess what popped up? Ed McMahon.
Right, and I remember we did this show 4 years ago, and it said everywhere it never happened. You couldn't find it. Now you're seeing it again. So tell me.
Okay. Then I might not be the same person you talked to 4 years ago, because the timeline has changed because of that. It changed the whole timeline. I'm not the same person.
Well, the real Slim Shady Gary, please stand up.
Well, you can sit down.
I'm already am, thank God.
Well, anyway, who's our guest tomorrow? What are we going to all be talking about? And do we have 2 guests tomorrow?
Oh, we do. So you better buckle up twice, mister. We've got Ruta Lee. Listen, she's an actress who's been in boatloads of TV shows and movies from the 60s and 70s. You name it, she's been in it. And then the second guest is going to be Bill Rigby. He's a paranormal researcher and a Bigfoot researcher. He's got a few reports and personal sightings. He had a personal sighting, matter of fact, right near me at Salt Fork.
That's going to be interesting. And, she even appeared on, guess what, Andy Griffith's show.
Oh, yeah, I think a lot of people.
She was on a couple of episodes where she was, he was smitten with her. Smitten and Smythe.
I think she was in an episode or 2 of Maverick, wasn't she?
Oh, yes, Maverick, too. A lot of shows. So we're going to talk to her about her movie career and all that. Maybe we can ask her. Don't tell anybody. Well, maybe we can ask her if she's ever had any paranormal experiences in all her times of acting.
Oh, I bet she has, especially in a lot of those Hollywood lots and old places. There's still some spirits of some actors and actresses floating around there.
Could be.
Oh,
James Dean. Think about that. James Dean, right?
The spider.
If he didn't get that crash in that sports car, what do you think the movie industry would have been like?
It would have been different. But in some universes, he lived on. He may still be living. Yeah, the old spider, the cursed car.
Yeah. Boy, it was not much of a car left, I can tell you that.
No, and they still don't know where that car is because it had several owners. Now it's kind of like disappeared.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that some of the parts were sold off with that wreck.
Us.
And everybody who bought that parts off that car died.
Had issues. It's like they refurbished parts from Flight 401 that landed in Everglades, and people were seeing the spirits in in these brand new jets that they replaced parts on. I was like freaking people out.
Now, you are into ghosts and stuff like that. Could these ghosts actually be time travelers stuck in between the different time dimensions? Something went wrong.
Yeah, that's one of the theories I've often asked some of my guests on my show. Not only that, but who's to say that it's another parallel universe kind of bleeding over? So, like, if you walk in a room, you see somebody talking, and then you don't, maybe it's another universe bleeding over. Maybe it's not even a ghost. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, again, because if you think about it, I don't want to sound negative and anti-religion, but if you're dead and you don't have, any life after that, it's gone, that maybe accounts for some of these paranormal experiences. Stuff is bleeding over from another dimension, another parallel universe, things like that. A portal's opening and closing.
Oh, I definitely think that's happened in some of these cases. Not only that, but it's vice versa. Maybe these other things on the other side, people are seeing you, and they're thinking you're a ghost.
I could be.
Yeah.
Naked and afraid, swinging from the tree, too.
Now, that might be a nightmare.
But check out our website at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. That is going to be changed very shortly to Gary's Night Dreamers Radio. People have been asking me, oh boy, have I been getting emails. Why did we change the name of the show after all these years? Well, the main reason why is we are taking the show to the next level. As a lot of people know that we're paranormal. We talk about everything strange out there, but we were adding and did add an extra 2 hours on Friday. So we are interviewing on Friday a celebrity and, asking them how they got started in it and what their life was like. And then, we go into the paranormal, like Bigfoot or what have you. And then we take calls. Long as you guys have the courage to call. I don't understand some of you. You could be talking to the big guy, but you don't do it, like Rory and Ron and all those other people out there. December, shame on you. And Thomas.
Well, they've all called before, but some of them didn't call tonight.
And a big congratulations to JCA. Actually, he went a whole show without eating any candy or eating anything during the show.
I do not recall.
Yeah, okay. Well, till tomorrow, everybody have a good one. Again, we have call-ins tomorrow night, and we might even take 1 or 2 calls for our celebrity tomorrow, too. So keep that in mind. Well, till tomorrow night, everybody have a good one. We will catch you on the other side of the campground. So remember that. Or something in that nature. Take care.
Who's friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's talk show radio, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers talk show will fix your despair. If you want to talk conspiracies, Night Dreamers is for you. Top secret case.
Now, for all of you out there who need to know a little bit more about a little bit less, here he is.
Allow me to introduce myself. I am not Boris Badenov, celebrity spokesperson for Wavely Samu Health Food Stores. Choice of fearless leader. No. He loves it. Anyway, to bring you a younger feel to your life, we have great health foods made with many chemicals we can't pronounce, only banned in California.
Oh, just like you, darling. Always trying to help others get a little more pain.
What can I say? I'm a nice guy. Anyway, this week at Wavely Samu Health Food Stores, we have a snack to give you the energy you need.
Boris, you have great idea.
Our deal of the week, Sasquatch foreskins, prepared by regal rabbis. Who knew Bigfoot was Jewish?
Well, my real name is Sasquatchki Bigfootstein.
Low in calories, low in carbs. This is one low-hanging fruit snack. Limited to 1 bag because how many you think we got? Get that special feeling with Sasquatch foreskins. Oh, very good, you love it. Available now at Wavely Samu